Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to Utility Sports. Today, we're going to come at you with our final 2021 NBA mock draft. And to celebrate us reaching the end of the 2021 mock draft season, we're doing a full 2-round mock draft in one video here, and we're including trades in this video. I spent a ton of time putting this together. So if you guys have enjoyed the content and are appreciating the work we're putting in here at Utility Sports, hit that like button and also subscribe if you are new. 90% of our watch time comes from viewers that are not subscribed to the channel, so it would mean a lot if you guys could go ahead, hit that subscribe button for me. I would really greatly appreciate it. For all the work I put in here, going through making these presentations, I spent quite a bit of time putting in the work, so hopefully you guys have been enjoying it. And now let's jump into it here. Pick number 1, we have the Detroit Pistons, of course. Very, very vital for this franchise that they ended up winning the lottery, puts them in a driver's seat moving forward. Troy Weaver badly needed this lottery to go well, in my opinion, and it did go very well for him. Now, I know there's some rumors here that the Houston Rockets want to move up. I actually don't think that is true. I think the Rockets are content at staying at 2, but I think that they're making it seem like they want to move up in order to keep the Pistons locked in on Cade Cunningham, because I think the Rockets truly do look at Jalen Green as their guy. So looking at the Detroit Pistons here now, they're going to go with Cade Cunningham. He's easily the best player in this class. He's NBA ready in all areas of the game. Okay, he's 6'8" at point guard, has a good feel for the game. He's a selfless star, willing to move the ball up the floor, and this is going to be perfect for the Detroit Pistons. Now, Killian Hayes, his fit becomes a little clunkier here. Not that Cade Cunningham can't function off the ball as well, but they drafted Killian Hayes to be a mainly on-ball guard last year, and Cade Cunningham's just going to simply be better at that. At the end of the day, Dwayne Casey, Troy Weaver are going to want the ball in the hands of Cade Cunningham, and that's what's going to happen. We're going to see kind of a similar effect here, I think, of what happened to Dennis Smith Jr. in Dallas when Luka Doncic arrived. His kind of role got really minimized. Now, I don't think it's going to be quite to the extent there in Detroit, but at the end of the day, I think Killian Hayes' functionality falls quite a bit with Cade Cunningham on that roster. But you still have a nice young backcourt, and you got some good size, and there's some potential there. If Killian Hayes develops as a shot creator yet, maybe he could work alongside Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham's a great player, a great fit to the city of Detroit, and I think that this is the no-brainer pick to start off the draft. Pick number 2 now, we have the Houston Rockets here, and like I said in the opener, they are going to be taking Jalen Green, the guard from G League Ignite. Here's an interesting picture of him versus Kevin Porter Jr. when Kevin Porter Jr. was playing for the Rio Grande Valley Vipers, and this is an interesting position here for the Houston Rockets. You're looking at a team that still has John Wall under contract. They got Eric Gordon under contract. They've got a few veterans on this team that probably aren't going to be there for the majority of next season, and definitely not the seasons following. You're looking at Jalen Green becoming that lead 2 guard, and Kevin Porter Jr. probably transitioning to a point guard figure on this Rockets roster. I think Jalen Green is an underrated passer, honestly, throughout this draft process. I think you do have enough playmaking there between Green and Porter Jr. combined to make it work. And you're looking at a backcourt that's highly volatile when it comes to scoring the basketball. They're going to give out a lot of baskets. They're going to give a lot of work to opposing defenses. I think these two are nice young building blocks for this Rockets roster. I think that they could be better well-positioned, making a few other moves along the way. So we'll see exactly what they do. Of course, at this point of the mock draft, they do have picks 23 and 24, but remember, we are including trades in this one, so there could be some crazy shakeups later on in this draft. Pick 3 now, we have the Cleveland Cavaliers here, and I think that they are a team that could be a very interesting watch on draft night. I know that they love Jonathan Kuminga. I think right now there is a real shot that they even take Jonathan Kuminga 3rd overall, and I think that there's a real shot that if a team in the top 5 wants to move down, it will be the Cleveland Cavaliers. This team is going to be the one to watch for on draft night. At this point in my mock draft, I do not have them moving down, and I do have them taking Evan Mobley, but I would not be shocked if Jonathan Kuminga ends up being the pick. He worked out for them. They absolutely loved him. They met with him after, had a private workout, private dinner. I think Jonathan Kuminga does have a shot to go 3rd overall, but Evan Mobley at this point, I think he's the better fit. I think he's the better pick, and the Cavaliers badly need someone in that front court alongside Jared Allen, assuming he's back. And if Jared Allen gets a massive offer they don't want to match, then they badly need Evan Mobley. I think Evan Mobley fits alongside Jared Allen and would be a great center if Jared Allen does leave. I think at the end of the day, this is the smartest, safest pick for the Cleveland Cavaliers with a lot of upside yet. Evan Mobley, an athletic freak at 7'5", tall, can protect the rim, can step out to the three-point line down the road. I'm pretty sure he's going to be able to improve his shot. He's got so much upside that I just really love this pick for Cleveland. Pick 4 now, we have the Toronto Raptors. They are a very, very, very fun team to watch here in this process because we haven't seen them pick this high for quite some time. Of course, they've been a playoff team for so many years in a row now. Through the DeRozan-Lowry era, of course, Kawhi Leonard, then the Siakam era, they just hadn't missed the playoffs for a while. Now, here, not only do they miss the playoffs, but they end up getting a top 4 pick through the lottery. They are very, very fun to watch here in this process because they've got a lot of young talent still. Pascal Siakam is not old. He's entering his prime of his career. Gary Trent Jr., a nice young player. You've got Fred VanVleet, who I think is a build-around guard in a lot of ways. And you've also got OG Anunoby, who I know a lot of Raptors fans you guys really like. So you've got a nice little infrastructure. Kyle Lowry's probably on his way out. Then you're also looking at Chris Boucher, who I really like, but you still need another center because Boucher just doesn't have the stamina to play a full 36 minutes a night. You need someone else to come in there. So the question really becomes, with Evan Mobley off the board, is it Jalen Suggs or is it Scottie Barnes? I would not be shocked if Scottie Barnes is the pick, but at this point, I think that they're going to go with the combo guard Jalen Suggs of the University of Gonzaga. He was one of the best players in college basketball all last season as a freshman. That's really, really hard to do. He came in, really impacted winning. Of course, they came up just short in the national championship game against the Baylor Bears, but Gonzaga was great all year, and most of that was because of Jalen Suggs' production as a passing guard, someone who could also be dynamic, get to the rim, finish. Very, very good under the rim finisher. I think he complements Fred VanVleet so well. You look at VanVleet, more of that perimeter scoring threat, someone who can create off the dribble, going right, going left as a shooter. Jalen Suggs, so good coming downhill, north-south at you, can hit you with Euro steps, hezzies, does a lot of things really, really well in that area, and I think that he's going to come into Toronto, be a perfect complement to Fred VanVleet, and also really good on the defensive end of the floor. I don't want that to get lost here as I'm talking about Jalen Suggs. This guy can defend the basketball. He can defend off ball as well. Not the biggest player. I think his upside's not necessarily as high as Scottie Barnes, but his floor is extremely high, and I think Toronto grabbing him, they probably look to be a playoff team next season. He's a perfect fit into their current roster as well, especially if they find a center in free agency, someone like Rashawn Holmes, or even a guy like Robin Lopez, who's probably not the sexiest name, but any kind of addition like that would really strengthen this Raptors roster. Pick 5, now we have the Orlando Magic here on the clock. And this pick becomes pretty obvious to me at this point. It's going to be Scottie Barnes out of the university, or out of Florida State, out of FSU. He's just a really well-rounded player in a lot of ways. Played point guard this past year for the Florida State Seminoles. Not something I would have expected coming in. He's a 6'9" forward with a 7'2" wingspan. He can defend the lights out of the gym. Now, offensively, he's got some limitations as a scorer. Magic fans, I know you're saying, hey, we need scorers. I know you do. But Scottie Barnes fits the culture of the Orlando Magic. Of course, they brought him in for a workout here. You can see that on the left side of your screen. And he also fits kind of their identity, what they like to do. Defensively, he's phenomenal in that area. And they're going to need guys who can really handle the ball and distribute. Markelle Fultz, not necessarily the best distributor. Not a bad one either, don't get me wrong. But they also like to look at Florida State a lot. They took Jonathan Isaac a few years ago. They prioritized defensive presence a lot during the drafting process. Mo Bamba's an example of that. Now, sometimes it hasn't worked out, but Scottie Barnes, not only does he have defensive upside here, but he's a very good playmaker, and he's just an all-around well-doing basketball player. He does a lot of things right for a team. He's going to come in, work hard, work his tail off, and make the right play more often than not. I think that's a really good thing here for the Orlando Magic rebuild. Plus, he's a freshman. He's extremely young coming out of Florida State. I think this is the no-brainer pick here for the Orlando Magic. Pick 6, now we have the Oklahoma City Thunder. And at this point, I think there's no surprise here that the pick would be Jonathan Kuminga. He's worked out for all the teams in the top from range 3 to 8. And I think at this point, Kuminga going 6th overall to the Oklahoma City Thunder makes a lot of sense. They need other guys who can score the basketball, and Kuminga's upside is the offensive end of the floor. He's got good defensive versatility as well. He's 6'8", 7-foot wingspan. He's going to be able to guard a few different positions. Not quite to the level of Scottie Barnes on that end of the floor, but there's still some upside there. And offensively, he's someone who's comfortable taking pull-up shots and off the perimeter. Kind of reminds you a little bit of a pseudo Paul George in some ways with his ability to handle the ball. I think he's going to keep getting better in those areas. Now, I don't necessarily think he's going to reach the ceiling of Paul George, but I think that's a pretty fair comparison based off the play style, the way that they handle the rock, the way they're comfortable shooting the basketball in a variety of different areas. I think Kuminga's got that upside offensively, and here the Thunder grab him 6th overall. I think that makes a lot of sense. You put him next to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and you really look to build your offensive side of the basketball there in Oklahoma City. Pick 7 now, we have the Golden State Warriors, and they're a really, really important team to watch in this process. Not only do they have pick 7, but they also have pick 14. I feel very confident about my top 6, honestly, throughout this mock process. And 7's the one that really gives me some issues because there's so many different ways the Golden State Warriors could go. They could look at a perimeter scorer. They could look at a perimeter defender. They could look at some youth. They could look at some age here because they're in such a unique position. Of course, James Wiseman, a guy who I think is a really good player, honestly. I think that he's getting a lot of flack. You know, he was just injured this past year, and he's a rookie coming in. He hadn't played college basketball. He basically only played 3 games for Memphis. I mean, he looked pretty good, honestly, especially when you watch him. Now, defensively, there's some things he's got to work out. I understand that. But he's got all the potential in the world. So you're looking at a team that can maybe look to draft young and start to build up another young core around James Wiseman, maybe a guy like James Bouknight here. But also, they're a team that is ready to win right now. They won 39 games last year. They went 39-33, I believe. And that was with Klay Thompson out. Steph Curry was playing lights out. You could add in some really good players here, maybe some juniors and seniors with picks 7 and 14, and really improve your current roster right now and try and win a championship at least one more time with Steph Curry. There's not a wrong way to go here if you're Golden State. At this point, I have them going with Davion Mitchell, the guard out of Baylor. Just played extremely well throughout the entire tournament, was the best player on that Baylor Bears team. I know a lot of you will think Jared Butler is. Davion Mitchell, in my opinion, was the best player, was the better defender of the two, shot the ball better throughout the tournament, and also did a lot of the ball handling for that team. And I think he's a great fit here into Golden State. I know that they have Nico Mannion, but this is an immediate upgrade over Nico Mannion off the bench. When you look at the height of Golden State Warriors basketball, you had Shaun Livingston coming off the bench, giving teams 8 to 14 points a night during the playoffs, hitting tough shots, and being really aggressive on the defensive end of the floor, making plays. Now, he wasn't quite the defender Davion Mitchell is, which is where you really see this upside. Davion Mitchell comes in from Baylor as the best perimeter defender on day 1 of this class. Okay, he's got the quickest feet. He's got extremely quick hands, can do a lot of things on the defensive side of the ball that a lot of these other guys just can't quite yet at this point. He's NBA ready. He comes in. He gives Golden State a chance to win a championship in year 1. He's a big-time improvement off that bench. And the Golden State Warriors, when they were winning chips before Kevin Durant came, it was defense and depth for that team, plus the shooting of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. You still got Klay and Curry there. So you add in some depth, you add in some defense, and this team could be right back to where they were 4, 5, 6 years ago. Now at pick 8, we have the Orlando Magic yet again here. And this is an interesting scenario because I had them go with Scottie Barnes, 5th overall here. So now you're looking at a team that badly needs some scoring, and they're going to find it here. Moses Moody, the guard out of Arkansas. And I actually really like this storyline here for the Orlando Magic because you're not only grabbing Scottie Barnes, but you're also grabbing Moses Moody. They both went to Montverde Academy at the exact same time. These two have played with each other in the past, found a lot of success on arguably the best team of all time at a high school level. And they're coming into Orlando, and they're going to be the 2 key build-around players for this team. You're adding someone who can play, make the ball, handle, and defend like crazy. You're putting him next to Jonathan Isaac in that forward slot, and then you're putting Moses Moody into the backcourt. You've got guys like Markelle Fultz, Moses Moody, Cole Anthony. Then you also have Scottie Barnes, Jonathan Isaac, Wendell Carter. You have a really good blend of offense and defense then based off of picks 5 and 8 here. Now, I know there's an argument for James Bouknight, but I think going 1 year younger with a guy who's a freshman instead of a sophomore makes sense. I think Moses Moody's a little bit more reliable as a 3-point shooter coming in. I think that he's also probably a better fit alongside a guy like Scottie Barnes. I think he's a little bit more playable off the ball than Bouknight. Although Bouknight does have a lot of off-ball functionality as well, I think Moses Moody just a slight uptick there. And for the Orlando Magic, this rebuild just started. Take the younger players, take the guys who have a high upside. I know Bouknight does as well, but I prefer Moses Moody in this scenario. Pick number 9, now we have the Sacramento Kings here. And I think they're a team that's really, really desperate to make the postseason. Luke Walton probably going to get fired if he misses the playoffs this year. So they're going to go with a guy who's going to really help them win and win now, and that's Franz Wagner out of the University of Michigan. Now, I don't think this guy has an elite trait, but he's going to be one of the best role players from this draft. He can come in, handle the ball, reminds me a little bit of Joe Ingles and the functionality that he provides to the Utah Jazz. Can handle the ball in the pick and roll, can space out to the corner, can space out to the wing as a shooter. Also just plays with a lot of heart and intensity. I really like what he brings as an off-ball player at the NBA level. Now, I don't have him as a top 10 player in this class. To be honest with you guys, on my big board, I don't have him as a top 20 player on this class. This is a key reminder for you guys. This is a mock draft of what I think will happen, not what I would do if I was the GMs of these teams. So don't come at me and say Franz Wagner is a terrible pick at 9. I get it, but there's also been a lot of other terrible picks, 9th overall in years past. There's been a lot of terrible picks all over the board. So don't come at me and say, oh, that's a terrible pick. Why would you do that? I'm not saying I would do this. I'm saying this is what I expect to happen. Franz Wagner probably will be a lottery pick just based off kind of the narrative around him, how I feel like teams are going to view him and his upside. And also, he has a very, very high floor. There's no denying that. I just think his upside is a little limited because of athletic questions. But at the end of the day, Franz Wagner goes 9th overall here to the Sacramento Kings. Pick number 10, now we have the New Orleans Pelicans here. And at this point, it is clear and obvious that they need shooting. And they're going to draft a guy that they have brought in for a private workout. That is Corey Kespert out of the University of Gonzaga. We see 2 Gonzaga players go in the top 10. Of course, Jalen Suggs and now Corey Kespert. And this does solve a lot of their issues there in New Orleans. I think Lonzo Ball is not going to be a New Orleans Pelican next season. And they badly need someone who can stretch the floor and shoot the ball. But Corey Kespert is more than that. He is an underrated athlete, in my opinion. I think he's more athletic than some of the other players that are going to go in the top 20 picks. I think he's more athletic than Moses Moody in some ways, honestly, especially as an off-ball player. I think that there is a lot of things that he does extremely well, and he's extremely polished. I think he's going to be a high-intensity defender. Now, he's not going to be a great defender, but he's going to put in the work on that end of the floor, which is key for New Orleans. He's the best off-ball player in this class in a lot of ways, with the ability to run and catch and shoot. He's going to be able to run off screens, catch, fire. He's also going to be able to stretch the floor about 28, 29 feet on day one of his NBA career. There's a lot of value there for New Orleans. You're looking at a team that doesn't have spacing. You're looking at a team that, if your best player is going to be Zion Williamson and your second best player is going to be Brandon Ingram, you're going to need some shooters around those guys to find success. Corey Kespert is the first step in that direction for David Griffin. Last offseason, he made some interesting moves, bringing in Eric Bledsoe and Steven Adams, but I think that he's going to right some of those wrongs, bring in some more spacing around his young core, and really start to build this team out the way that he needs to, adding shooting around a generational athlete in Zion Williamson. Pick 11, now we have the Charlotte Hornets here, and this is one of the picks that if this happens on draft night, I absolutely love this. I think Charlotte would be one of the biggest winners throughout this process, and that is James Bouknight, 11th overall. I think that he could be a top 5 player from this class. I have him ranked, I believe, 7th on my big board currently, and I think that there's a lot of upside here with Bouknight. Really good athlete. I think he functions off the ball very well, especially if you're putting him next to LaMelo Ball. Because of the way that LaMelo can pass the ball, James Bouknight at UConn caught a lot of lobs, was able to run off backdoor screens. Now in the NBA, he's not going to get some of those easy looks all the time. But I think with a passer like LaMelo Ball, that window doesn't need to be as big, especially with LaMelo being able to put it right on the target and Bouknight being able to elevate and finish that play. Also, Bouknight, a very good scorer with the ball in his hands. I think he brings the creation element that the Hornets need a little bit, especially next to Gordon Hayward. Hayward just hasn't been healthy the last 4 or 5 years in his career, misses time here and there. So adding in another wing scorer like Bouknight who can also handle the rock, take some pressure off. I know they got Terry Rozier here, so their lineups get a little interesting. In year one, what do they do with that? But ultimately, at the end of the day, Bouknight's got extremely high upside. I think the Hornets have to go in that direction if he's available for their pick. Pick 12, now we have the San Antonio Spurs here. And the player that I have mocked here, this is an extremely hard pick for me because I think there's a few ways they could go. They could look at a backup rim protector, someone like Isaiah Jackson. I think that they could look international, a guy like Alperen Şengün. And I do have them going international, but not for Şengün. I have them going with Josh Giddey, the point guard out of the NBL, played for the Adelaide 36ers. He's 6'8", has real feel for the game. And the only reason I'm mocking this at this point is the rumors surrounding DeJounte Murray are very surprising to me. And they don't make sense unless they're planning on targeting possibly a point guard in the lottery this year. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense to move on from DeJounte Murray. They don't have a point guard in line. Lonnie Walker is not better than DeJounte Murray, and they know that. And the only way DeJounte Murray's name would come up in any trade conversation is if they had plans on replacing him with someone who fits Greg Popovich's system and ideals, and that's Josh Giddey, someone who can handle the rock, play out of the pick and roll, and just a really smart player, willing to make the extra pass. Now, I think one thing that they have to be a little cautious of is Josh Giddey was a little bit of a ball stopper for the Adelaide 36ers, did a lot of handling it at the top of the key, not really moving the ball around, telling people where to go, what to do. But at the same time, those are good signs. If you have a player who's 18 years old, playing in a men's pro league, able to tell guys, hey, you need to be here, you need to go there, I need you in this spot so that we can succeed as a team. That shows how high of his basketball IQ he has, and I think that fits the San Antonio Spurs system, especially as they try and make the playoffs again next season. Pick 13, we have the Indiana Pacers here on the clock, and they're a team very, very interesting to me because Rick Carlisle, their new head coach, I don't think they really have a roster that fits around what his style of basketball is in a lot of ways. I think Brogdon fits, and outside of that, I don't really see a lot that fits into that roster because he's a really pick and roll heavy coach. He loves to bring up screens, double high screens, a lot of stagger screens. And I just don't think that they really have the roster built for that. I think he's going to be looking for another ball handling guard, someone who can get to the rack. And that's Keon Johnson here out of the University of Tennessee. This guy has extremely high athletic upside. He posted a 48-inch max vertical, which is incredible. That shattered the record by 2.5 inches at the combine. That's really going to help his draft stock. Now I have him sliding down to 13 here. It's hard to see some of the fits here. I don't think the Sacramento Kings pulled the trigger on him. If the Pelicans took him, I think that would be an interesting fit just because he's not a shooter. He can't shoot the ball at all right now. Pacers do have some shooting, so Keon Johnson could fit right into that roster. Day one, the Pacers are not going to be a team that's selling. They want to stay in the middle of the pack. Historically, that's what the Pacers do. They haven't been a top 10 team in the lottery, I believe, for 20 years at this point because they are just not interested in picking that high. They would rather keep the fan support by winning games and at least being mediocre to good. And that's what they're going to look to do here. Keon Johnson's the selection. Pick 14, now we have the Golden State Warriors yet again. And of course, earlier on in this mock draft, they went with Davion Mitchell. So now here they have another option. Could they go with another older player, someone who's ready to come in and help them right away? Or do they go with a younger guy who has a little bit of potential? I think that they get a nice blend of both here. Jalen Johnson out of Duke does a lot of those things. Of course, only played about half a season for the Duke Blue Devils this past year. But he's someone who can handle the ball on the perimeter. You're looking at Kelly Oubre for sure being out the door here at this point. If you're the Golden State Warriors, you just can't plan on him being back, especially with Steve Kerr's comments saying that, oh, Oubre'd probably come off the bench. He's not interested in doing that at this point of his career. So it's key to find a replacement for him. And I think Jalen Johnson kind of gives them some of the same elements that Harrison Barnes used to when they were back winning championships in 2015 and 2016 when they were there in the championship. I think that Jalen Johnson gives you some of those same qualities. He's physical. He's ready to play off the ball. Shot fairly well at Duke this past year as well from the three-point line. I think he's a really well-rounded player. I think he's a complete player. Now, I don't think his upside is as high as other people think about him, but he's someone who can create for himself off the bounce. Not going to be a nice mid-range shooter early on in his career, but I think he's got some room to grow in that area, and he can also space the floor to the corner. I think he's a nice rotational player day one for them, and I think he's someone who could really grow into being a third or fourth option on a championship team around James Wiseman, and assuming they add other talent in the future. Pick 15, now we have the Washington Wizards here on the clock, and this is really a key spot for them because the centers have fallen a little bit. So they're going to go ahead and grab Isaiah Jackson here. I think he's the best fit into what they need. Gafford's been a really nice addition for this team, giving them some rim protection, but I think here you're getting an even better rim protector in Isaiah Jackson, someone who can really contest shots at the rim, also has some offensive upside. He's going to be a really good rim runner. He's going to do the 3 R's. He's going to run, he's going to roll, and he's going to protect the rim. The third R there is rim protection. And of course, Isaiah Jackson does all 3 of those things well, but he's also got a little bit of a jump shot into the mid-range area. I think the Wizards take Isaiah Jackson here. Robin Lopez is a free agent. And at the end of the day, I think that Isaiah Jackson would be a really good grab for the Washington Wizards. Pick 16, now we have the Oklahoma City Thunder here on the clock. This pick comes from the Boston Celtics, of course, in the trade of Kemba Walker. And now at this point, the Thunder here are going to take a pick that really fits Sam Presti's draft history and draft style. That's Alperen Şengün here out of Turkey, and I love this guy. Okay, he averaged 19 points a game in what is probably the 3rd or 4th best men's pro league in basketball right now. I'd probably opt for the 4th best in my opinion. And I think that this is a really good grab for Oklahoma City because you're looking at bringing in a center who has passing feel, can shoot the 3 ball a little bit. Now, he hasn't done that high volume yet, but he's got the touch to stretch out to the 3-point line for sure. He's also got a really good post arsenal. I think that he kind of hides some of the deficiencies of Aleksej Pokusevski. The 2 of them are going to be able to play on the floor at the same time. Poku kind of plays like a guard more than a center, honestly, in a lot of ways. And I think Şengün, Pokusevski can exist together, provide some rim protection. Also, Şengün is vertically more athletic than I think a lot of people give him credit for. Now, he's not the quickest player. He's not going to be running down the floor super fast, but at the end of the day, he can elevate when he needs to. He's going to be a little bit of a rim protector, not a great one, but at least mediocre in that area. And offensively, the upside's there. He can score the basketball, phenomenal footwork out of the post. One of the more polished post-scoring big men coming into the draft, probably since Joel Embiid, honestly. Now at pick 17, we have our first trade of the video here, and this is, of course, the Memphis Grizzlies pick originally, but here we have the Houston Rockets jumping up. The Grizzlies receive picks 23 and 24. The Rockets receive this pick, which is pick 17, and also pick 51, which is in the second round, of course. And looking at this, the Houston Rockets have to be jumping up for somebody. So who is that somebody going to be? That is going to be Kai Jones, the center out of the University of Texas. And I think this is a phenomenal grab for the Houston Rockets. After grabbing Jalen Green earlier, it was obvious that they still need to find someone to play in the front court, at least as a 4-man, but more so as a 5 combo 4. And I think Kai Jones does that extremely well. He's going to fit next to Christian Wood perfectly. And this Rockets team badly needed to find someone who can play off of Christian Wood and also can take over some of those center minutes when Christian Wood's out of the game. When he went out for that 20-game stretch this year, they went 0-20. If the Rockets don't find a way to address big man in round 1, it is a loss for them in the draft. This is a A+ move for them moving up. I know you probably give up a little extra value than you'd like to, having to give up both 23 and 24 to get 17 and 51. But at the end of the day, Kai Jones wasn't going to be there for them at pick 23 or 24. They had to move up to get him, especially with Şengün going off the board right before them. They had to move up to get Kai Jones. I think this is a perfect move for the Houston Rockets. Rockets fans, let me know in the comments section what you think about this trade. Pick 18, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder here yet again. And here is another pick that perfectly fits what I think Sam Presti is going to be looking to do. And that's taking Usman Garuba, the forward out of Real Madrid, played for the U18 team, and also has gotten a lot of notoriety this Olympic season for his defense on Kevin Durant. Now, I think that he's a very intriguing player. Offensively, he's nowhere close to being a starting NBA level player. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, but he does have a little bit of playmaking touch. He's somebody who understands how to play the game the right way. He just can't really score the ball consistently. He's a little bit like PJ Tucker on the offensive end, where you're looking at maybe him being able to grow into a corner shooter, someone who can maybe attack hard closeouts and finish at the rim and score in transition. That's really where Garuba's offensive game is going to be limited to. He'll never be a creator. He'll never be a tough shot maker, anything like that. But with some development, he could be at least somewhat of a corner shooter, 3-and-D type of wing. And he's also got a lot of defensive upside. Now, I think right now his footwork's a little questionable from times. I think he's not as quick laterally as a guy like Davion Mitchell, which is why Davion Mitchell goes so much earlier in a draft like this. But Garuba's got really good size. He stands about 6'8", and he's going to be able to guard probably 1 through 4 during the prime of his career. Now, day one, there's no way I'm going to put him on a point guard with his lateral quickness and footwork. There's no way I'm putting him on a point guard in year 1. But I think years 2 through 4, maybe you start kind of testing him on point guards a little bit. And then maybe when he really hits his prime, 23, 24 years old, you say, okay, you're going to guard most point guards, because I think he's got that kind of upside. Also has really good makeup athleticism, really good second jumper as well. Does a lot of things on the defensive end of the floor that a lot of coaches are really going to be looking for. I've been saying it throughout this whole draft process. He's a Swiss Army knife, and I really, really love what he's going to be able to bring to the NBA defensively. Offensive limitations make him fall to 18, but this is still a really good grab for Sam Presti. Pick 19, now we have the New York Knicks here, and there's a real divide on what I think the Knicks could do. I think that they could look at a point guard who can create for them a little bit, but they also have a lot of money in free agency where they're going to be able to address some of those needs. So here at this point, I think they're going to go and look for a guy who fits off of Julius Randle, and that's Trey Murphy III out of the University of Virginia. Spent 2 years at Rice University as well, and he's just a guy who's going to come in and be a very, very good player on day one. Kind of reminds me of Jay Crowder, but I think he's actually got a higher ceiling than Jay Crowder simply because of his ability to shoot the ball. He's a much better shooter than Jay Crowder ever has been. And I think that defensively, he's going to be very similar to how Jay Crowder plays. Offers really good size, stands at about 6'8". Also a very good wingspan. I mean, that's pretty typical for a lot of these guys here in the first round. If you're a 6'8" wing, you're probably going to bring in a good wingspan as well, offer good length and size and mobility. And Trey Murphy does all of that. He's very, very disciplined too in his closeouts, closes out well, isn't going to get beat off the dribble very often. And he's also just a very smart basketball player in a lot of different ways, knows his role. He's going to step out to the corner, step out to the three-point line. He can shoot it with range. And he's also got a little bit of plus athleticism to him that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. A lot of people are just titling him a 3-and-D wing. I think that he's also got a little bit of slashing potential off the ball. He's more athletic than Jay Crowder. I think that he's going to be a guy who fits really, really well into New York Knicks basketball. I know Tom Thibodeau is going to love adding a guy with his defensive intensity into the roster, And I think offensively, he fits perfectly off of Julius Randle. The Knicks need a little bit more shooting, and Trey Murphy is going to provide that. Pick 20 now, we have the Atlanta Hawks here, and there's no surprise that the Hawks are going to be looking for a backup point guard. This offseason is going to be all about retaining John Collins for them and then looking to find a little bit of backcourt depth in the draft. And here they're getting a really good pick here. Trey Mann, the combo guard out of the University of Florida. He can shoot the ball from deep, very good at handling the rock, did a lot for that Florida Gators team after Andrew Nembhard transferred, and then also Keon Johnson went down. He had to step up big time, and he did for the Florida Gators. He was a key part of their success, was the best player on this team this past year, and really fueled them throughout the season, also led them into the tournament and got a win or two, I believe. He just does a lot of things well, can shoot the ball from deep. Like I said earlier, he's a shot creator off the bounce, and I think the Atlanta Hawks here are getting the best possible option here for their bench unit. He's going to come in and be an immediate impact player. I love this pick for Atlanta. Pick 21 now, we have the Knicks yet again, and they're probably sad to see Trey Mann go off the board, but that's okay because there's another really good young player here that I think is rising up a lot of executives' boards, and that is Jaden Springer, the combo guard out of the University of Tennessee. He played this past year on a pretty severe ankle sprain, and I think that kind of limited his athletic upside. And during private workouts and draft workouts, he's been looking really, really good. That is what the rumor mill is saying, and I think the New York Knicks grabbed him here 21st overall. He's got some shot creation potential off the perimeter. Very, very comfortable handling the ball as well, especially in the pick and roll areas. He's going to be able to hit shots going to his right. Needs to develop a little bit going to his left yet, but I think at this area of his development, only being 19 years old, the New York Knicks grab him and look at him as probably one of their key players in the backcourt. Emmanuel Quickley, Jaden Springer, not a bad young backcourt, especially if they're able to bring back Derrick Rose for one more year at least. You kind of have a nice little trio there of guards, and then maybe look to add one more in free agency as well. Pick 22, we have the Los Angeles Lakers here. And there's another really good player here who I think's really elevated his stock from the NBA Draft Combine, and that is Nashon Bones Highland. Played very, very well during the scrimmage games. Only actually played in one of them, scored 17 points, was very efficient, played well defensively as well. You look at him, he's 6'5" guard, can shoot the ball, also very comfortable handling it. And when I say he can shoot the ball, though, I really mean this kid can shoot the ball. He was 15 of 18 during one of his workouts on 30-foot jump shots. That's right, 30-footers. He was shooting 15 of 18 wide open from 30 feet. That is incredible. The Lakers, this solves a lot of their issues. He can function as their secondary playmaker when LeBron James is off the floor. He can function very, very well when LeBron is on the floor as one of the best shooters coming in from this draft. He's played really, really well for BCU in his 2 seasons there. Carved up my Dayton Flyers both years. And I think that this is one of the more underrated players in this draft. Earlier in the process, I didn't see him being a necessarily first-round pick, but there's no way he is not a first-round pick now after his performance during the Combine. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes even higher. I have him fairly high on my board as well. I'm thinking about dropping a big board of my own here. If you guys are interested, comment, let's see the big board or something along those lines. I'd love to hear from you guys. Pick 23, we have the Memphis Grizzlies here now. Of course, this pick comes from the Houston Rockets. They also have pick 24. And I think this is the player that they would have taken at 17 anyway. This is why I think that they're going to be motivated to maybe move down a little bit. This is one of the guys that they brought in for a workout. I heard that he looked really, really good in that workout. And he also played very well during the scrimmage games. And that's Josh Christopher, the guard out of Arizona State. Was a very, very high recruit coming out of high school. Kind of struggled with in terms of efficiency playing for the Sun Devils this past season. But the upside's there. He can create on 2 levels already. You're looking at someone who's going to be very good around the rim, very good in transition, and also very good in the mid-range area. The key question is, can he stretch out to the 3-point line, and how effective does he become in that area? But it's obvious when you look at this Grizzlies roster, they need to find scoring wings so badly. Dylan Brooks, just not going to be his primary trait, is not going to be scoring the basketball off the bounce. I know he's got a little bit of upside in that area, does it occasionally, but I don't think he's the most efficient player in terms of those plays. Also, you're looking at Kyle Anderson being a free agent right now. He's not much of a self-creator either. Josh Christopher has that self-creation asset. And now at 24, we got the Grizzlies here again, and they're going to double down on this with another high potential grab, and that's Zaire Williams out of the University of Stanford. I love this for the Memphis Grizzlies. If one of these 2 players pans out, you're looking at putting a dynamic scoring wing, someone who can handle the rock, create in the mid-range. Zaire Williams can even stretch out the 3-point line. I think Zaire Williams is also a very underrated playmaker. Does a lot of things really well. You're looking at the addition of Christopher and Williams, who can probably play together as well, just based off Zaire Williams' size. He's 6'8", and able to handle the ball. Josh Christopher, pretty good size, 6'5". you're looking at two guys who can fit next to John Morant and give you the scoring dynamic that the Memphis Grizzlies, let's be honest, have needed for the last 15 years. Even when they were at their best with Marc Gasol and also, Tony Allen, Mike Conley, they just needed one elite scorer in that bunch. They would have probably won a championship. I think that the Grizzlies here right now, the way they're building this team up, they need an elite scorer, and they're taking shots at two guys who can maybe develop into all-star type scorers. Zaire Williams, Josh Christopher, there's definitely that ceiling there for them, but there's also a very low floor for both of these two. It's kind of risky, but at the end of the day, the Grizzlies have the infrastructure around Ja where they're going to at least be a really competitive, good team for a while. I think adding in two guys who could be perimeter scorers would be the best move for the Grizzlies here on draft night. Pick 25, we have the Los Angeles Clippers here on the clock, and they're a team that probably would have loved to see Bones Highland here on the clock for them, but he is not available. So they're going to go with point guard Sharife Cooper here out of the University of Auburn. Now, let's be honest. He averaged over 20 points a game, over 8 assists a game in a college season. Of course, only played about 14, 15 games for the Auburn Tigers because of some issues with the NCAA. But at the end of the day, Sharife Cooper going to the Clippers, it makes a lot of sense. You're looking at a team that probably could use a facilitating guard. They tried it with Rajon Rondo. He just hasn't really gotten a lot of run. Sharife Cooper measured very well at the combine. Now, I don't know if they measured his hair or not, but he did measure at 6'3.5" without shoes. So that's very, very impressive for Sharife Cooper. That really helps elevate his draft stock. And he's someone who, if he ever figures out that jump shot, is going to be a very, very good player. Now, I think his swing skill is that jump shot. If that translates, he's going to be so good. But if it doesn't, then he becomes a little bit more of that Ricky Rubio type, Rajon Rondo type, which has quite a bit less value, if we're going to be honest. But at the end of the day, he can still be an impactful player, and I think he'd help the Clippers in year one with his ability to pass the basketball. Pick 26, now we have the Denver Nuggets here on the clock, and they're a team that's going to be looking for someone who fits off Nikola Jokic and also can fill some of the hole left by Jamal Murray being out for most of this next season, but also will be able to fit next to Jamal Murray in the future, and that's Josh Primo, guard out of Alabama. Played extremely well during the draft combine. There's a lot of guys who've elevated their stock during this process, and some guys who've really hurt their stock, haven't played as well as they could have, maybe didn't take advantage of this process as much. Josh Primo really did take advantage of it, though. Showed ability to play off the ball as a guard, able to cut back door, able to do a few different things, but also showed an ability to handle the ball out of the pick and roll. And I think there was a lot of functionality that I saw in draft during the draft combine, during the scrimmage games, that I thought, wow, if Nikola Jokic is handing that ball off to him and then kind of fading out of a pseudo pick and roll in a lot of ways, or a pick and pop, Primo is going to be able to deliver back to Jokic or get to the rim and finish. And I think there's a lot of value there. Of course, Will Barton, did opt out of his player option. They're probably going to come to an agreement, I would assume. But I think the Nuggets would see Primo as the eventual replacement on that perimeter. They've been looking for a two guard for a while, and I think Josh Primo is the best option for them at 26. Pick 27, now we have the Brooklyn Nets here, and they're a team who's going to take real advantage here of who's fallen to them. I think it's a player who's probably going to be a top 20 player from the class when it's all said and done, and that is Chris Duarte, guard out of Oregon. He does a lot of things really, really well for a team. He's able to be a creator into the mid-range area, but there's a lot of defensive upside as well for him. He's got really good hands, really good feet. He's physical. Kind of reminds me of Dylan Brooks with the way that he's able to use his body on the defensive end of the floor, and he's a plus athlete in a lot of ways. Now, he's not as athletic as some of these other guys who've gone before him, and I think his age also really hurts him in this draft process. He's 23, almost 24 years old already. Not very common. You see a rookie getting drafted at 23 years old. But at the end of the day, the Nets need someone who's going to come in, help them win. And this becomes the obvious pick for them just because you're looking at Spencer Dinwiddie more than likely leaving the Brooklyn Nets this offseason in free agency. Chris Duarte comes in and is an immediate replacement and honestly has some higher upside, especially on the defensive end of the floor. I think his functionality alongside Kyrie Irving and James Harden fits a little bit better as well. You could see him playing the 1 through 3 this next season. I love this for the Nets. He's a really good grab at 27. I think that is very possible. He's a top 20 player from this class. Pick 28, now we have the Philadelphia 76ers here, and a guy who's fallen a little bit in this mock because of some of those questions about his medicals. I know he got cleared, but that's Jared Butler. I think that some teams are going to still be a little cautious of that. Of course, having a red flag like that come up during the draft process does probably pull you off some boards, or at least move you down some boards a little bit. The 76ers at this point take advantage of that, grab Jared Butler. He's for sure a first-round player in this draft. Very, very talented, can shoot the 3 ball. Also really competitive on the defensive end of the floor. And I think he kind of fills the need there that the 76ers have, especially assuming that Ben Simmons does get traded. You're looking at trying to add in some more guard play onto this roster. They've got some wings there in Thibault, Danny Green that they really like. They've also got Joel Embiid, of course, the build-around player there. You're looking at some more help for that backcourt. I think Seth Curry's a really good player. I think that Tyrese Maxey's a great player for the future. And I think Jared Butler's going to develop into a really nice player for the future as well for the 76ers roster. Now, there's a real chance that they trade this pick as well. I don't want to brush over that like, oh, Daryl Morey's for sure going to take a guy in the first round because he hasn't done it since 2015 with Sam Decker. So there's a real chance he doesn't have this pick on draft night. But at this point, assuming he does, it's going to be Jared Butler with how the board has shaken out. Pick 29, we have a trade in here to announce. Of course, this is the Phoenix Suns, and this trade does make a lot of sense to me. We have them trading with the New Orleans Pelicans, who have multiple second-round picks, and there's a key motivator here for the Suns. We'll get into that. But the Pelicans here get pick 29. The Suns receive pick 40, pick 30, or pick 43, and also cash in this deal. And the reason the Suns are looking to make this trade is, first of all, pick 29 is owed guaranteed money. Picks 40 and 43 are not, all second-round picks are not guaranteed money picks, so there's not really going to be a key drop-off from 29 to 40 and 43. And also, you're getting cash back in this deal. The Suns are about to have to spend for the first time in about 10 years. You're looking at Chris Paul being a free agent. DeAndre Ayton is owed a extension at this point. The Suns are going to have to make a decision here on, hey, are we paying all three of these guys, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and DeAndre Ayton? The answer should be yes. So finding other ways to save money along the process, get some cash back in for your owner, that's a good move for the GM. And you're also getting picks 40 and 43. There's not really much of a drop-off. You get to add a little bit more depth, especially into that front court probably, and maybe a guard as well there in Phoenix with Campaign probably getting a better market than I would have expected him to going into this past season. So you're looking at the Suns here picking up some cash. At this point, then the New Orleans Pelicans here at this juncture would take Cam Thomas, the guard out of LSU. That's why they wanted to move up so badly. They have a guard here from Louisiana on the board for them, and I think this makes a lot of sense. He stays in the state of Louisiana, and this is a perfect grab for the New Orleans Pelicans because, like I said earlier, with them grabbing Corey Kispert, they need a little bit more shooting potential, and Cam Thomas has been shooting the lights out in his draft workouts. I told you guys during this whole process, Cam Thomas, if asked to function off the ball, is going to be a phenomenal shooter in the NBA. He was forced to take a lot of tough shots. He was basically Will Wade's entire offense, and I think looking at him going into next season, he's going to find a really good role for himself where he really ups his efficiency and also provides a little bit of bench scoring for a team. I think the Pelicans are the perfect landing spot for Cam Thomas in this draft process. Pick 30, now we have the Utah Jazz here, and there's no denying that this team needs a little bit more athleticism and size on the perimeter, and there's a great option here for them. That's Greg Brown, forward out of the University of Texas. The Longhorn himself is a poster machine. If you guys haven't watched him, make sure you go do so because he's going to put some guys on posters in the NBA. Extremely athletic, 6'8". I actually measured at 6'7" without shoes during the combine, so he'll be about 6'8" with shoes on in the NBA. And he does a lot of things at this point that aren't really going to show up on the stat sheet. He's athletic. He's kind of got that it factor to him. He's able to create some shots. Now, the stat sheet shows that he is inefficient. The stat sheet shows he's not necessarily going to be the best defender on day one, but the Jazz are going to have a development project here with Greg Brown. I think that this is the best option for them at this point. Now, round two. Before we jump into that, comment your favorite pick from the first round. Also, again, if you guys are enjoying the video, hit that like button. Also, subscribe for more content here at Utility Sports. It would mean a lot to us to have your guys' support. And now, pick 31, we have the Milwaukee Bucks here. Congratulations to the Milwaukee Bucks for winning the championship. Absolutely awesome to see. So congratulations to Giannis, the Milwaukee Bucks. And here at 31 now, it's going to be about trying to find a way to get back. And they go ahead and grab Joe Wieskamp, the forward out of the University of Iowa. This guy can really, really shoot the basketball. Probably the second or third best shooter in this year's class. Of course, Corey Kispert being the best shooter. I think Wieskamp can shoot it on the move as well, just like Kispert can. Now, Wieskamp has a little bit more limitations defensively, a little bit more athletic limitations than what Corey Kispert has, but at the end of the day, Wieskamp really showed out in the scrimmage as well, put up a 27 bomb actually in one of the games, and I think he's elevated himself to a near first-round level player. I wouldn't be surprised if he does go in the first round actually as well. He can really shoot the basketball, and if you're looking at the Bucks, It's about trying to find ways to improve on their current roster. Pat Connaughton's there. I really like what Connaughton brings as an athlete and as a role player, but I think for lineup flexibility, Wieskamp's a better fit, just with his ability to actually really shoot the lights out of the gym. I think the Bucks here grabbing him 31st overall would be a no-brainer. Pick 32, we have the New York Knicks here on the clock, and they're going to go with Nehemiah Cade, who, again, during the draft combine scrimmage games, really elevated his stock, did a lot of things that I think Tom Thibodeau, who was in attendance for both of the days, is going to value for a big man on his roster. Nehemiah Cade hit the offensive boards really hard. He's a true 7-footer, can protect the rim very, very well. He's athletic, strong, does a lot of things at that center position you're looking for. Can screen and roll, can run the floor. I really like Nehemiah Cade. I never thought he was going to be a guy who fell into the 50s like other people are saying. Some people didn't even see him as a guy getting drafted. Coming out of Utah State, he's a Portuguese-born player. Actually was born in Brazil. Does a lot of things that I think is going to be very, very valuable for this Knicks team, especially when they're at a point in this process where Nerlens Noel is a free agent. He's probably going to have a pretty strong market based off how he just played. Mitchell Robinson is going to be in the final year of his deal. They need to look at that center position and maybe try and find some guys who are going to fit long-term. I think Cade is the best option here for Tom Thibodeau and the Knicks. Pick 33 now, we have the Orlando Magic, and they're going to go offensive oriented again here. JT Thor out of the University of Auburn. He was a big candidate for Sharif Cooper. When Sharif Cooper was looking to pass the ball, JT Thor was his main target, and a lot of times he's a smooth shooting left-handed jump shot. He's someone who can stretch out to the three-point line, also very comfortable in the mid-range area, and offensively, the upside's there. Now, defensively, he's very, very limited with his mobility. This is not a very Orlando Magic type pick, but I think that the Orlando Magic have to look at themselves in the mirror and say, hey, we need guys who can score the basketball, and that's what JT Thor does. I think he's a nice complementary big man into their already nice young core of Mo Bamba, Wendell Carter. He can play off of them. I think he could also play a little bit of small ball 5 in some regards, and I think he's going to play very, very well off the ball. If you're drafting Scottie Barnes 5th overall, you need to find other guys who can score the ball efficiently. That's JT Thor, Moses Moody in this draft. The Orlando Magic are one of the big winners if JT Thor is there for them at pick 33. Pick 34 now, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder here, and at this point, there's a guard that's fallen, Ayo Dosunmu, out of the University of Illinois. I know a lot of people see him as a first-round pick. I simply do not. I think that he doesn't have an elite skill that necessarily translates super well to the NBA, but I think coming off the bench for the Thunder, he brings a nice little dynamic guard for them that will provide some flexibility in transition as a scorer, as also a facilitator in those areas. And I think he can play off the ball with Shai Gilgeous very, very well. And I think he's also going to be able to take some of the pressure off Shai Gilgeous-Alexander offensively with his ability to handle the rock, go into the pick and roll a little bit. Now, again, I don't think he has an elite skill. That's why he falls to pick 34. But at the end of the day, he's still going to be a good player. He's going to have a nice impact in the NBA. And the Thunder here need to continue improving this roster. And I think Dosunmu is a really, really good way for this Thunder roster to take a step forward. Pick 35, we have the Pelicans here. And a guy who's been working out for a wide number of teams. He has 16 draft workouts scheduled. And that's Austin Reeves. And I think the Pelicans here, with all the picks that they have, look into that backcourt, try and find a bigger guard. He stands at 6'5", able to handle the rock. He's very, very comfortable in those areas. He was basically the Trae Young for the Oklahoma Sooners this rendition, because he was having the ball in his hands basically the entire time for that team, and he really elevated their floor in a lot of ways. I think he's a guy who's going to be able to stretch out to the three-point line fairly well as a creator. Now, I'm not sure what his functionality is on this Pelicans roster, but the Pelicans are going to be one of those teams interested in him, especially with all the second-round picks that they have. I know they had him in for a draft workout. I think the Pelicans, if Reeves is on the board at one of their second-round picks, they probably pull the trigger on him. Pick 36, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder yet again on the clock, and here they're going to go with center Charles Bassey out of Western Kentucky. Again, you're looking at Sam Presti really looking at all options here, trying to improve this roster. He's got so many picks, and grabbing a center here, someone who can really play with his back to the basket. Well, not really his back to the basket, sorry, but more of a rim-running traditional big. Alperen Şengün's the guy they took earlier, who's a back-to-the-basket big. You kind of get a nice little fold of this. Of course, they traded Moses Brown earlier in the offseason to the Boston Celtics. I think that's one of the more underrated moves for the Celtics. You're looking at Moses Brown, who's going to be a really nice piece for them for the future. But Charles Bassey comes in, gives you a strong physical center, able to play around the rim, able to put his nose in there and really snuff out rebounds. I think that's going to be key for the Oklahoma City Thunder. They need more size and strength into that front court. Pick 37, the Detroit Pistons here now on the clock, and they're going to go with forward Kessler Edwards out of Pepperdine. He's someone who I thought had a real shot to elevate his status during the draft combine and the scrimmages, but I just don't really think he took full advantage of it. But at the end of the day, he's 6'8" still, offers very good length at that position. He can shoot the three ball well. He has somewhat of an unorthodox release point though, and I think the Pistons at this point are still going to be looking for guys who can play along the wing, play off of Cade Cunningham, play off of Killian Hayes, and Kessler Edwards is going to be one of those guys that can do that. Also, defensively, I think that's really what stood out to me during his combine and scrimmage workouts. You're looking at someone who's going to be able to guard probably the 2 through 4 on day one. He's got pretty quick feet and does a lot of things, I think, very, very well in a lot of different ways on that end of the floor. At the end of the day, Kessler Edwards comes into Detroit, gives you a nice perimeter defensive option and someone who can stretch out the floor as well. A little bit of 3-and-D, kind of what they have with Saddiq Bey, and I think it's about trying to find a little bit more talent there in Detroit. Pick 38, we got the Chicago Bulls here, and at this point, they're going to go with guard Jason Preston, who I absolutely love in this draft process. I think he's going to be a guy who's a little slept on. Now he's a little bit older in this process as well, but he can really, really run an NBA offense. Okay, he's someone who's going to be able to rile up guys, really put a team around him, and really just find a lot of success. And I think the Bulls need someone off the bench who's going to be able to do that. He's a true playmaker first, also can score for himself when asked to. I really like this addition. If he was a little bit younger with the production he's had the past year, he would have been a much earlier pick in this draft. His age limits him a little bit in terms of where he gets drafted, but 38th overall to the Bulls. I think this is a good combination of playmaking and scoring for the Bulls that badly need a little bit more help into that backcourt. Sacramento Kings here at 39. Of course, earlier they went with Franz Wagner. Now at this point, they're going to go with center slash forward Jericho Sims out of the University of Texas. He's someone who also has really elevated his status throughout the combine. I've been seeing him as a early second round pick throughout this whole process. I was kind of getting memed by a lot of guys saying that, but yet here we are seeing him in our final mock draft going 39th overall, posted a massive vertical, stands at 6'10", able to protect the rim, able to move out in space a little bit. I actually played against him in high school. He's a very good athlete, does a lot of things athletically that you look at him and you say, wow, you would not expect that from a 6'10" guy. He brings that type of athleticism. Now, skill set, not quite there yet. You're going to have to take a little bit of time developing him. He's already 22 years old, but I think the athletic upside and the defensive abilities around the rim give him a lot of value, especially to a Kings team who might be losing Richaun Holmes in free agency. Pick 40, now we have the Phoenix Suns. Of course, this pick comes from the trade with the New Orleans Pelicans here, and they're going to go with Quentin Grimes, guard slash forward out of the University of Houston. I like this fit. He kind of found himself this past year with the Houston Cougars. Does a lot of things that you're looking for in a backup guard and a backup forward. He's able to handle the rock a little bit. He's a little bit of an underrated playmaker, kind of brings a little bit of that tertiary ball handling ability with him to an NBA roster. And I think the Suns are going to be looking for a little bit more depth, a little bit more verticality, and a little bit more physicality. And I think that Quentin Grimes brings you all three of those components. Pick 41, we have the San Antonio Spurs here on the clock. And they're going to go with forward Herb Jones out of the University of Alabama. After going Josh Giddey earlier, it's clear that they're going to be looking for someone who can play along the wing and give you some real versatility, and that's what Herb Jones does, arguably better than a lot of other players in this class, because he's someone who played the small ball 5 position for the Alabama Crimson Tide, works hard on the defensive glass, works hard on the defensive end of the floor in general, and also offensively, underrated playmaker. He's going to be a little bit of a triple-double machine. Kind of reminds me of Draymond Green in a lot of ways. I think this is a really high-value pick for the Spurs here as they try and build out their roster a little bit more. Pick 42, we got the Detroit Pistons yet again here on the clock, and they're going to go with forward Isaiah Todd out of G League Ignite. This guy comes into Detroit, gives you a scoring option off the bench. He functioned really, really well for G League Ignite this past year, especially into the mid-range area as someone who can catch in that area, also works well in zones, does a few things that you're looking for as an off-ball player. Now, I think there's a lot of room for this guy to improve yet as well. He's athletic. He's got the ability to arguably stretch out to the three-point line fairly early on in his NBA career. And I think for him to become a very good player, he's going to have to become a more consistent defender. I think that he struggled mostly on the defensive end of the floor, but for the Pistons, after already grabbing Kessler Edwards, you have Isaiah Stewart, you've got Saddiq Bey, you've got some defensive players there already in place. You need a little bit more offensive upside, and I think Isaiah Todd brings that to you. Pick 43, again, we have the Phoenix Suns here from that trade with the Pelicans, and they're going to go with guard Daisha next out of G League Ignite as well. And And the reason they go with Nashon Knicks here is you're looking at Campaign and Chris Paul both not being on the roster yet at this point. Of course, they've got free agency ahead of them. They're going to have to look for a guy who can come off the bench, be a consistent guard for them, a consistent playmaker. And I think long-term he fits well next to Devin Booker, especially you're looking at Chris Paul getting up there in age. I'm not sure how many more great seasons Chris Paul has ahead of him. And I think Chris Paul as a mentor to Nashon Knicks would be phenomenal for Knicks' own improvement. He's also gotten himself into better shape throughout this offseason. He looked a lot better at the Combine than he did during the actual season for G League Ignite, slimmed down quite a bit. And I think the athleticism is going to start showing up the more he slims down as well. Pick 44, we have the Brooklyn Nets here. And at this point, after grabbing Chris Duarte in round 1, they're going to be looking for a little bit more guard upside, and that's David Johnson here out of the University of Louisville. This guy can do a lot of things that they're going to be looking for as a playmaker and also someone who's going to be a dynamic bench scorer, comfortable shooting the 3-ball, but best suited when he's going north-south at you. He can play next to Chris Duarte in the future. I also think he'd be a nice little fit next to Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. I think his game doesn't fit as well with James Harden, honestly, but I think with Kyrie and Durant, he fits pretty well. And the Nets are going to be looking about trying to find a little bit of backcourt help and a little bit of front court depth during this draft. And I think David Johnson, Chris Duarte are two really good starting points for them. Pick 45, we have the Boston Celtics. Of course, this is their first pick of the draft at this point. They're going to go with guard Miles McBride. They had him in for a workout this offseason so far, and he's going to be a guy defensively that's going to put the work in. He's going to be able to pick up 94 feet. He's got really quick feet, very good hands as well. He's a hard worker. And with Marcus Smart possibly on the trade block down the road here, I think Miles McBride could become the nice complimentary pick for them. It's obvious, too, that they need to look into that backcourt a little bit more, find some depth. Evan Fournier is a free agent. Marcus Smart, I got some questions about him. They just traded Kemba Walker. Their front court's filled out now. They brought in Al Horford, brought in Moses Brown, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. Those are their key build-around players at this point. Miles McBride would fill in that point guard position very well, especially defensively with his upside there. Pick 46, now we have the Toronto Raptors here. They also have pick 47. And at 46, they're going to go with forward/center Raquan Gray. Came into the Combine a little overweight, honestly, from my thought, but still really impressed me in a lot of things that he did. Able to move his feet well. He's going to be able to guard the 3 through 5 in the NBA, I think, especially if he stays at that heavier weight. He'll be able to deal with 5s a lot easier than I was expecting even. And he's also very, very surprisingly skilled with the ball in his hands. Just looking at his body type and his assumed play style, you wouldn't expect him to be able to handle the rock. But he's comfortable putting the ball on the deck a little bit from the perimeter. Kind of surprises guys with his ability to push off and finish around the rim. I think that Raquan Gray is a nice grab here for the Raptors. Pick 47, now you're looking at the Raptors taking a big-time swing here for B.J. Boston, the forward/guard out of the University of Kentucky. Looking at this Raptors roster after grabbing Jalen Suggs 4th overall and Raquan Gray to kind of fill out their big man front court a little bit. They still need to spend some money in free agency to help that center position. But B.J. Boston, with the Toronto Raptors history of developing guys, I think B.J. Boston should be praying to land with the Toronto Raptors. They develop guys better than almost any other team in the league, honestly, in my estimation. And you're looking at B.J. Boston, someone who has real half-court skilling, really good half-court scoring skill set. Just needs to kind of be unlocked and really find an uptick in his efficiency. I think the Raptors are the best team for him. They'll spend a little bit of time in the G League probably, but I think that would be a good thing for Boston at this point. B.J. Boston lands with the Raptors. I really love this upside pick for Toronto. Pick 48, we have the Atlanta Hawks here. Now at this point, they're going to go with guard/forward Aaron Henry out of Michigan State. He is a defensive weapon. Does a few things really, really well on that end of the floor. He's got very quick feet, can shuffle, also has good makeup athleticism. Actually was kind of forming a habit there at Michigan State of pinning shots off the glass, which you don't really see very often for a guard. He formed a habit of doing that. He's a left-handed player, also comfortable going from left to the right on Euro steps. Nice little finisher under the rim. Below the rim as a slashing option. I think he gives a little nice wrinkle to that Atlanta Hawks team. Now, I don't think Aaron Henry's going to get a lot of time in years 1 or 2 of his career, but as he develops some trust there from Nate McMillan, I could see him getting used as a defensive piece, especially at the end of the games when, hey, maybe we want to take off Bogdanovich, put in Aaron Henry to get a stop, call a timeout, put Bogdanovich back in the game. I think Aaron Henry brings that kind of upside to the Atlanta Hawks in terms of lineup flexibility. Pick 49, we have the Brooklyn Nets yet again. They're going to go with forward Jeremiah Robinson Earl out of the University of Villanova. This is a guy who I think is falling a little bit during the draft process just because he's not the most exciting player. Not a lot of people like talking about him, but he's going to be a good NBA player for a contending team. Brings you physicality into the front court. He's going to be able to rebound the basketball. Villanova players just find ways to be successful in the NBA. Look at Jalen Brunson for the Dallas Mavericks, finished top 5 in 6 Man of the Year votes. Mikal Bridges was almost an all-NBA defender this year. I thought he should have been. And you saw how key he was for the Suns on their run to the NBA Finals. Of course, came up just short. But those are just 2 examples of Villanova players being very, very successful in the NBA. And I think Jeremiah Robinson-Earl's going to be another example of just finding success, playing inside your role. Robinson-Earl is going to do his job and do it well for the Brooklyn Nets. Pick 50, we have a trade here to announce. At this point, it is the Philadelphia 76ers receiving swap rights on the 2022 second-round pick. So Philly now has both their own and Denver's 2022 second-round picks, and they also get cash. The Nuggets here get pick 50. So the Nuggets are moving up to pick 50 here in this trade, and that's to grab guard Joel Ayayi from Gonzaga. He's a player who falls a little bit in this mock draft, down to 50. I think not participating in the combine. And scrimmage games kind of hurt his stock a little bit, especially as some of these other guards kind of elevated themselves. Guys like Quentin Grimes, for example, Josh Christopher. But Joel Ayayi, I think, provides some good upside. He's 6'6", able to handle the rock. And this is a guy who's going to fill in for Jamal Murray. I think it was obvious that the Nuggets just need a little bit more guard depth, and they did a really good job in this draft grabbing that with Josh Primo and also Joel Ayayi. Now you're looking at a much improved backcourt, a little bit more athleticism, a little bit more bounce, and also some ability to handle the rock, create for others. That's what Ayayi does better than Primo. Primo creates for himself better than Ayayi does, and I think Ayayi also fits really well defensively into the future of this Denver Nuggets roster. He's going to be a guy who just works hard on the glass. He's going to be able to grab some offensive rebounds. He was grabbing over 10 rebounds a game for a little while for Gonzaga this past season. That's unheard of for a guard. He's 6'5", brings in good size, good work ethic, good motor, and I think that's going to be really key for the Denver Nuggets if they grab him. Pick 51, this is the Houston Rockets pick, of course, coming from the Memphis Grizzlies from that trade earlier on. And here they're going to go with Ives Pons from the University of Tennessee. Now, he's undersized. He's only 6'6", but he's going to probably play a little bit of that forward center position, and he's got a lot of defensive upside. He can guard 2 through 5, honestly, in my estimation. He's able to move his feet. He's athletic, predictive on the defensive end of the floor, and he, it's hard over height for him because he really puts in a lot of work on the defensive end of the floor. He's going to work harder than every other guy. He's going to box out. He does a lot of the little things very well for an NBA team. He's going to be able to box out and really move his feet and just do everything the coach is going to ask of him. And that's going to be really key throughout this process. I thought that the Rockets, if Marcus Bagley would have stayed in the draft, would have taken him here at this point, but he, of course, is returning to the Arizona State Sun Devils. So Ives Pons is actually the pick here, 51st overall. Pick 52, we have the Detroit Pistons here, and they're going to go with Luka Garza, center out of Iowa. Now, key thing here for Luka Garza, he slimmed down a lot before the combine, lost about 30 pounds, and that's really improved his mobility. Now, he's still not the most mobile player. There's a key difference between good mobility and improved mobility. Luka Garza does not have good mobility, but he does have improved mobility from where he was during the season, and he's got a real good arsenal offensively. He's an offensive big man, able to step out to the three-point line, shot over 40% from three this past year for the Iowa Hawkeyes, and he's also really, really polished around the rim. He's going to be able to punish mismatches. He's going to be able to take advantage of some small lineups, and if you're facing a team that's switching every screen, Luka Garza is going to run right down to the block, catch the ball, and score on you down low. Really, really efficient offensive player, was the best player in college basketball this past season, and the Detroit Pistons would be smart to add a little bit more talent onto that roster, especially with the arrival of Cade Cunningham. You want to have as much talent as possible. Pick 53, you're looking at the New Orleans Pelicans here, and they're going to go with forward Trendon Watford out of LSU. Very interesting. They end up grabbing both LSU products that are going to get drafted in the top 53 here. Trendon Watford and also, of course, Cam Thomas, who they drafted earlier. And those two guys were the key players for the LSU Tigers this past year. Really, really led that team. Almost took down Michigan in the NCAA tournament. Just came up a little bit short. But they played very, very well all year long. Trendon Watford, one of the few players to have worked out for the New Orleans Pelicans at this point. And I think he's a very, very good grab for this Pelicans roster. Pick 54 now, you're looking at the Indiana Pacers here. Earlier on, they grabbed Keon Johnson. They're going to come back and grab another athletic freak, Terrence Shannon Jr., left-handed wing, 6'6", kind of reminds me of what Cassius Stanley brought last year, who they drafted, but he's actually a little bit better in the half court as well. Played next to Mac McClung for Texas Tech this past year. And I think having a playmaking point guard like McClung really helped out Shannon quite a bit, kind of unlock his game in the half court, averaged about 16 points a game for the Red Raiders. And the Pacers here grabbing a forward, they've got some question marks. TJ Warren showed some discomfort when Nate Bjorkgren was the head coach there. Maybe Rick Carlisle is able to salvage that relationship. But I think looking into the forward room and trying to find someone else who could come in and provide some athleticism and scoring in the half court would make a lot of sense here at 54. I think the upside with Shannon is very high at this point. There's also very high risk here. There's not a great chance that he ends up becoming a guy who sticks into the league for more than 3 years. But at the end of the day, I think the upside risk is worth it here for the Pacers at 54. Pick 55, now we have Sam Presti and the Oklahoma City Thunder on the clock yet again, and they're going to go ahead and take Sandro Mamukelashvili from Seton Hall. Again, looking at the Thunder, looking into the front court, and I think this pick makes a lot of sense for Sam Presti. He's a point center type feel, brought up the ball quite a bit for Seton Hall this past season. And you're looking at somebody who's able to also stretch out the floor a little bit. He's going to function as a face-up 4, face-up 5, able to shoot the 3 ball, has good passing feel. The Thunder here are going to be looking for guys who have upside, and Mamukelashvili is a player with some upside, even though he's already 22 years old. I think that the Thunder should look at him as a potential target. Pick 56, now we have the Charlotte Hornets here on the clock, and they're going to go with Franz Wagner, the forward/guard, played overseas, 6'10", but I really like what this kid brings. He's able to shoot the ball lights out. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Bojan Bogdanovic, just kind of with his frame, length, size, and ability to shoot the ball. Also has a fairly similar looking jump shot, but I think Blyenberg is a good fit. You're already looking at a team that added James Bouknight. Now it's about trying to find a little bit more shooting around LaMelo Ball. You've got their half-court scorer in Bouknight. You find a shooter here in Blyenberg. And with 57, you come back and you're looking for another player who has some upside here, and that's Makur Maker, the center out of Howard University. Of course, was on a lot of teams' radar before going to Howard, ended up getting hurt, ended up having COVID, ended up having the season get shut down there at Howard as they kind of shut down the program for the season just with some COVID complications. So shaky season for Makur Maker, only scored 23 points at Howard University, did not get to play more than, I believe, 2 games. So he's kind of unproven, but he showed some real skill set at the draft combine that I think will catch some teams' eyes. I think the Hornets here, with their current center situation, looking at a guy who has upside like Maker does make a lot of sense, especially when it's such a low-risk pick here at 57th overall. Pick 58, now we have the New York Knicks, and at this point, they're going to go with center Filip Petrusev. Played with Gonzaga for a year, then went overseas, 2 years removed from his high school eligibility, and you're looking at a guy who comes in to the New York Knicks and provides some spacing into that front court, which I think is really, really key. Remember, earlier they went with Trey Murphy, then they were able to grab Nehemiah Queta. Petrusev is a little bit different than those guys. They also grabbed Jaden Springer. This is a really good grab where they're able to look into the front court for a couple picks, look into the back court for a few picks as well, and really just improve this roster around Julius Randle. I think Randle's really cemented himself as their build-around player there in New York, and I think every move that they make should be based on the successfulness of building around him, and I think Petrusev is going to be a great example of that. Pick 59, we're looking at the Brooklyn Nets yet again. This is their 4th pick of the draft, and they're going to go with forward Isaiah Livers out of the University of Michigan. He's a guy with real 3-and-D potential. Now, he's got an NBA-ready body. He's going to be able to play physically on the wing, but I think his offensive limitations really come into play when he has to put the ball on the deck. He's not ready to be a key contributor on a team yet. He has to get a lot better in the half-court offense other than just shooting the ball. Of course, that's going to be his functionality for the most part, but he needs to improve as a guy who can attack closeouts. He also needs to improve as a transition scoring threat. I think he's just athletically a little bit limited, but at this point, pick 59, you're looking at a guy who has kind of the frame and skill set that the Nets are going to look to add anyway at this point. So I think he's a good grab here, 59th overall. And pick 60 now, the Indiana Pacers, the final pick of the draft. Of course, if you guys have enjoyed, hit that like button and subscribe if you are new. It means so much to us here at Utility Sports. Pick 60, we have the Indiana Pacers going with Moses Wright. Like I talked about earlier, this team doesn't really fit into Rick Carlisle's system yet at this point. They don't really have that athletic big man. They're looking for some guys who are going to fit into what Rick Carlisle wants to do as a screen and roll offense. And I think Moses Wright from Georgia Tech really showed during the combine why he would make some sense for the Pacers to grab with the final pick of the draft. He's athletic, able to catch lobs, also works hard on the glass. I think this would be a really good grab for the Pacers. He complements Miles Turner's skill set. He also complements Domantas Sabonis' skill set. So if they continue with this roster for a little while, he could still get some run. I think Goga Bitadze is going to be one of the biggest losers, honestly, from the Rick Carlisle hire, because I just don't think his skill set necessarily fits what Rick Carlisle is going to look to do with his team. And I think Moses Wright would be a guy that could instantly supplant Goga Bitadze. Even though I really like Bitadze's skill set myself, I don't think Rick Carlisle is going to value it as much. And I think he's going to look for more of an athletic rim running center. And they grab it here 60th overall with Moses Wright. Hopefully you guys did really enjoy this video. If you did, again, hit that like button and subscribe. It would mean so much. Turn on the notification bell as well so you don't miss out more content here at Utility Sports. Thanks again, guys, so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the very next video.